At dinner, my twin brother announced his engagement, and my father stood up. Finally, one son who isn't a complete disappointment, unlike this pathetic excuse who can't even keep a wife. My mother added, "We should have selected just one embryo. We knew which one would be the failure." Everyone, including my nieces and nephews, laughed while pointing at me. I simply smiled and left. 6 months later, my parent was on his knees in my house, begging me, "Hey everyone. Before we dive in, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and ensures you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Throw away because my brother knows my man." Also, sorry for the wall of text. This got way longer than I expected. Honestly, I've been debating posting this for weeks. I guess I always knew my family had a favorite, but what happened last month finally made me snap. For context, I, 36M, have an identical twin brother, Paul, also 36M, obviously lol. Despite looking the same, our lives couldn't be more different. Growing up, Paul was always the golden child. Better grades, more friends, better at sports. I wasn't terrible or anything, just average. My parents never tried to hide their preference, like at all. I got used to hearing, "Why can't you be more like your brother, at least once a week?" Anyway, I got married young, 24, to my college girlfriend. Things were okay for a while, but we grew apart and divorced last year. Nothing dramatic, no cheating or anything. We just wanted different things. Meanwhile, Paul had been dating Caitlin for about 3 years, and everyone in the family loves her. She's nice enough, I guess, but my parents treat her like she's literally descended from heaven. So last month, my mom texts the family group chat about a special dinner at their house. I almost didn't go. Honestly, wish I hadn't. But you know how it is with family. You keep showing up, hoping things will be different. I arrived a bit late. Traffic was insane, and everyone was already there. My parents, Paul and Caitlin, our older sister and her husband, their 3 kids, and a couple of aunts and uncles. I grabbed a beer and tried to blend into the background, like I usually do at these things. Halfway through dinner, Paul stood up and clinked his glass. The whole room went quiet as he announced that he and Caitlin were engaged. Everyone erupted in cheers, and I genuinely smiled and congratulated them. I mean, despite everything, he's still my twin. I was happy for him. That's when everything went to hell. My dad, 3 beers in, also stood up with this huge grin and literally shouted, "Finally one son who isn't a complete disappointment, unlike this pathetic excuse who can't even keep a wife." He was pointing right at me. I froze. The room got quiet for like 2 seconds before my mom chimed in with, "We should have selected just one embryo. We knew which one would be the failure," and then everyone laughed. Not uncomfortable laughter. Not that awkward, "Oh God, what do we do?" laugh. No, they were genuinely amused. My 12-year-old niece was pointing at me and giggling. My brother's future in-laws who I'd just met were smirking. Paul just stood there with this smug look that said, "Better you than me." Edit, I should mention I've always been the family joke, but this was next level even for them. I sat there for exactly 15 seconds, counted in my head, while everyone continued making comments about how at least one twin turned out right. Then I just smiled. Not a happy smile, the kind of smile you give when you finally see something clearly for the first time. I stood up, put $40 on the table for my share of dinner, and walked out. No drama, no speech, no tears. I just left. The absolute flood of text started before I even got to my car. "Mom, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke." "Dad, man up and come back inside." "Bro, chill. It wasn't that serious." "Sister, you're ruining Paul's moment again." Honestly, reading those messages in my car was the moment something just broke in me. Or maybe fixed itself. I don't know how to explain it. Like a switch flipped. I blocked every single family member on my phone and all social media that night. Changed my email too. The only person I didn't block was cousin Vanessa, who wasn't at dinner and has always been decent to me. That was 6 weeks ago. In that time, I've moved apartments, my lease was up anyway, got a new phone number, and basically disappeared from their radar. According to Vanessa, they spent about 2 weeks assuming I was being dramatic before they actually realized I was serious about cutting contact. I'm not gonna lie, bros, it's been weirdly peaceful. Like, I never realized how much mental energy I spent family interactions or recovering from them. My therapist, started seeing her after my divorce, says I've made more progress in the last month than the previous 6. Here's where it gets interesting though. Through Vanessa, I've learned that Paul's perfect life isn't so perfect. Apparently, his big promotion that was guaranteed fell through. And those fancy Instagram posts of their house, they're actually drowning in debt. The engagement party they were planning has been postponed for mysterious reasons. Meanwhile, I've been focusing on myself, hit the gym, reconnected with old friends, who my family always talked down about, and started a side project I've been putting off for years. Nothing massive, just selling custom stuff online. Made my first $1,000 last week. Vanessa called yesterday to tell me that my parents have been asking about me nonstop, getting increasingly desperate to reach me, not because they miss me or feel bad, but because they need something. Won't say what yet, but I'll find out soon. And that's where I am now. Part of me wants to never speak to any of them again. Another part wants to see the looks on their faces when they realize the failure twin isn't available for their shot anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but for the first time in my life, I'm actually excited to make that decision for myself, not based on what would disappoint them least. Update. So yeah, didn't expect my original post to blow up like that. Thanks for all the support, bros. The last 3 months have been interesting. First, a quick recap for those who missed it. At my twin brother's engagement dinner, my dad publicly called me a disappointment who couldn't keep a wife. My mom said they should have selected just one embryo, meaning not me, and literally everyone, including children, laughed at me. I smiled, left, and cut contact with everyone except my cousin Vanessa. Honestly, these past 3 months without my family have been weirdly peaceful. Like, I didn't realize how much mental energy I was spending bracing myself for their criticism. My apartment still has a leaky faucet, and my internet cuts out when it rains too hard, but at least I don't wake up to texts about how Paul just bought a new car or how disappointed my parents are that I'm still single. About a month after going NC, I changed my number and moved to a different part of town. Nothing fancy, just a smaller place with better natural light. My therapist says I'm showing signs of post-traumatic growth, which is apparently a real thing, not just something she made up to make me feel better, lol. The crazy part started about 6 weeks ago. My cousin Vanessa texted asking if we could meet for coffee. I was hesitant at first, worried she was just a flying monkey for my parents, but Vanessa has always been cool. We met at this little cafe near my new place. Edit, for those asking, no, Vanessa and I aren't a thing. She's literally been like a sister to me and is happily married with a kid on the way. Vanessa looked tired when she showed up, circles under her eyes like she hadn't been sleeping. She barely sat down before telling me that Paul's life was imploding. Apparently, the week after I went NC, his fiancée Caitlin found messages on his phone from not one but 3 other women. Not ancient history either, recent stuff. I wasn't exactly shocked. Paul always had a wandering eye, but I figured he'd finally grown up. Vanessa said the engagement is on hold while they work things out. Her air quotes, not mine. Translation: Caitlin's parents won't let her call it off entirely because they already put deposits down for the wedding venues. But here's where it gets really interesting. According to Vanessa, my dad's business is in serious trouble. I don't want to get too specific, doxing and all that, but basically he sells stuff to other businesses and his biggest client just dropped him. Like overnight. 50% of his income, gone. I sipped my coffee and just listened. Didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. Don't get me wrong, I'm not crying for them, but I'm not celebrating either. It's just facts. Vanessa then dropped the real bomb. My parents and Paul have been desperately trying to find me. They've shown up at my old apartment multiple times. Sorry, Kevin, if you're my replacement tenant reading this. Called my old work contacts, and even tried to get my ex-wife's new address from mutual friends. Why? Because they need money. A lot of money. Turns out my brother wasn't just cheating on Caitlin, he was also mishandling funds at work. Nothing criminal, I think, but enough to get him demoted and put on probation. His fancy downtown apartment? Yeah, he can't afford it anymore. The BMW he was so proud of might get repossessed. And my parents, who have been living beyond their means for years, are suddenly facing the reality that their golden child can't bail them out. Their house needs a new roof. Mom's credit cards are maxed out and Dad's business might not make it to the end of the year. I'm not going to lie. I sat there feeling nothing, not happiness, not anger, just nothing. Then Vanessa slid her phone across the table. On it was a series of texts from my mom. Please tell Ian we need to talk. This isn't a joke anymore. Vanessa, tell him his father is having health problems from the stress. If he's still angry about the dinner, he needs to get over it. Family is supposed to help each other. That last one actually made me laugh out loud in the cafe. Where was all this family helps family energy when I was going through my divorce? When I was sleeping on a friend's couch for 3 months? When I needed a small loan to fix my car last year, and they told me to be more responsible with money? Like Paul? Vanessa wasn't asking me to contact them. She just thought I should know what was happening. She also mentioned that Paul had been asking about my side business, apparently. He suddenly remembered that I'm good with that internet stuff and thought maybe I could hook him up. The audacity is almost impressive. I thanked Vanessa for the heads up and walked her to her car. She hugged me and said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. First time anyone in my family ever said those words to me. After that meeting, I went home and made a pros and cons list about getting back in contact with them. The cons list was 2 pages long. The pros list was blank. So I decided to keep doing exactly what I've been doing. Nothing. But then last week, something changed. I was grabbing groceries when I literally bumped carts with my father in the cereal aisle. It was the most awkward moment of my life. No cap. He looked old, gray, like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. His cart had ramen noodles, cheap bread, and the store brand everything. For a second, I almost felt bad for him. Then he opened his mouth. He started with how I was being childish and needed to man up and help the family. When I didn't respond, he switched tactics, saying he and Mom missed me so much. When that didn't work, he finally got to the point. They needed me to lend them $50,000. I just stared at him. This man, who called me a complete disappointment 3 months ago, was now asking me for 50 grand. The absolute lack of self-awareness was staggering. I told him very calmly that I didn't have that kind of money to lend anyone. He scoffed and said he knew about my internet business. Lol, it's literally just a small Etsy shop that makes like $200 a week. And that family comes first. I just said, no it doesn't. and walked away, leaving my half-filled cart in the aisle. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. Since then, they've escalated. Paul showed up at my gym, no idea how he found out where I work out. Mom left a tear-filled voicemail on my work phone. Dad even contacted my ex-wife on Facebook to try to get to me. Yesterday, I got a formal-looking letter in the mail. It was an invitation to a family meeting at my parents' house this weekend. The tone was weirdly professional, like a business negotiation. The last line said, "We have a proposition that will benefit all parties involved." I'm curious enough that I'm actually considering going. Not to help them, but to hear what exactly they think they can offer me. I've spent my whole life giving them chances they didn't deserve. Maybe it's time I flip the script. Whatever happens, I'm not that same pushover who walked out of dinner 3 months ago. I've got boundaries now, and no amount of guilt tripping is going to make me cross them. I'll update again after the family meeting if I decide to go. Part of me wants to just ghost them entirely, but another part wants to see if they've learned anything at all from this. Final update. So yeah, didn't expect this to blow up again. My DMs are a complete dumpster fire RN. Thanks for all the awards and stuff, but T-Bosh, I'd trade them all for a normal family. Anyway, I promised an update after the family meeting, so here it is. Honestly, I never went to that meet. After sitting on it for a day, I realized I was just setting myself up for more manipulation. Instead, I texted Vanessa that I wasn't coming and turned my phone off for the weekend. Took a solo camping trip to clear my head. Just me, a tent with a small hole in it, and some questionable freeze-dried meals. It was exactly what I needed. When I got back and checked my messages, things had apparently gone nuclear in my absence. 15 missed calls from unknown numbers. 7 voicemails ranging from tearful mom to threatening dad. And one very interesting text from Vanessa. They're completely screwed. Paul got fired. Call me. I called her while making breakfast, burnt toast and coffee, living my best life. According to Vanessa, who heard it from my sister, Paul hadn't just been mishandling funds at work, he'd been straight up using company resources for personal expenses. When they couldn't reach me for the bailout money, Paul panicked and tried to cover his tracks, which only made everything worse. He got fired and might actually face legal consequences. Not going to lie, I felt a weird mix of emotions. Part of me thought, karma's a Another part just felt sad. Not for Paul specifically, but for the whole situation, like watching a car crash in slow motion. The real bombshell dropped 3 days later when my doorbell rang at 6 in the morning. I stumbled to the door in my pajama pants, expecting it to be a package delivery or something. It was my entire family, Mom, Dad, Paul, and even my sister, all standing on my doorstep looking like extras from The Walking Dead. Dad's eyes were bloodshot, Mom's makeup was smudged, Paul was wearing the same hoodie I'd seen him in on Instagram 4 days earlier. I almost closed the door, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped outside, instead of inviting them in. Boundaries, as my therapist would say, and asked what they wanted. Dad immediately launched into this bizarre speech about family sticking together and how blood is thicker than water. Mom kept trying to hug me while simultaneously complaining about how hard it was to find my new place. Paul just stared at the ground like a toddler caught stealing cookies. My sister looked like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. When I didn't immediately respond, Dad finally got to the point. In the 3 weeks since my last update, their situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. Dad's business was officially failing. Suppliers were demanding payment up front because of his credit issue. They'd had to take out a second mortgage on the house. Paul was being sued by his former employer. Mom's shopping addiction had maxed out 12 credit cards. My sister's husband had lost his job, and they'd moved into my parents' house with their kids. And the cherry on top? Caitlin had publicly dumped Paul on Instagram, tagging all his friends and family in a post detailing his cheating. The perfect golden son's reputation was in shambles. I just stood there in my old Star Wars t-shirt, feeling strangely calm. 3 months ago, this situation would have sent me into fix-it mode. I'd have been scrambling to help them, taking out loans, destroying my own financial future to save theirs. But now, Dad literally got down on his knees in my doorway. Not metaphorically, actually on his knees, begging me to help them, saying they needed $100,000 to save the house and deal with Paul's legal issues. I asked the obvious question, why would I help the people who humiliated me and called me a failure? Mom burst into tears, saying they were sorry and they didn't mean it. Dad mumbled something about just joking around. Paul finally looked up and said they'd make it up to me. The funny thing, not one of them actually apologized. Not really. It was all, we're sorry you felt that way. And you know how Dad gets when he's drinking. And it wasn't that bad. I told them I needed to think about it and asked them to leave. Dad tried to argue, but eventually they all shuffled back to Mom's SUV, which they're apparently 3 payments behind on. After they left, I made some coffee and called my therapist for an emergency session. We talked through my options and what healthy boundaries would look like in this situation. I decided I wasn't going to completely abandon them, but I also wasn't going to be their ATM. The next day, I invited just my dad over. When he arrived, his face lit up like he'd won the lottery, probably thought the cash was already in the bag. I sat him down at my kitchen table, which, beat to two, still wobbles because I haven't fixed that one leg, and laid out my terms, a formal written apology from everyone who was at that dinner, acknowledging exactly what they said and did. Family therapy sessions, minimum 6 months, non-negotiable. Mom gets help for her spending addiction. Paul takes responsibility for his own mess without dragging down the rest of the family. I would help them restructure their debt and create a budget, but I would not be giving them any large sums of money. Dad's face went through about 17 different emotions in 30 seconds. He started arguing that I was being unreasonable, that family doesn't put conditions on helping each other. I just got up, opened the door, and told him those were my terms. Take them or leave them. He left. 2 days later, Vanessa texted me a screenshot of a Facebook rant my mom had posted about ungrateful children and how some people forget where they came from. Classic mom, making herself the victim. But then something unexpected happened. My sister called me. We hadn't spoken directly since the dinner. She was crying, saying she couldn't take living with our parents, that her kids were picking up on their toxic behavior, that she was sorry for not standing up for me. It was the first genuine apology I'd received from anyone in my family. Ever. I invited her and her family over for dinner the next night. We talked for hours after the kids went to sleep in my spare room. She confessed that she'd always gone along with the Ian is the failure narrative because it kept the spotlight off her own struggles. Her marriage was in trouble. Her husband had been hiding their financial problems, and she was desperately trying to maintain the image of having it all together. By the end of the night, we'd made a plan. She and her family would move into an apartment. I helped with the security deposit, only actual money I've given any. I'd help her husband with his resume and job hunting. She'd go to therapy and work on setting her own boundaries with our parents. A week later, I got an email from Paul. No apology, just a job application attached with a note asking if I could put in a good word at my workplace. I didn't respond. Then yesterday, the bombshell dropped. Dad showed up at my door again, this time alone. He looked defeated, older, smaller, somehow. For the first time in my life, my father actually apologized, like a real apology. He admitted they'd always treated me as the lesser twin, said he'd been jealous of how easily things came to Paul, and projected his expectations onto him while dismissing me, confessed that he'd been wrong about everything. Then he asked if my offer of help was still on the table, not for money, but for the family therapy and budgeting help. I said yes, but my terms hadn't changed. All of them needed to acknowledge what happened and commit to the process. No quick fixes, no sweeping things under the rug. He agreed. We're starting family therapy next week. Mom's still resistant, making excuses about being too busy, doing what I have no idea since she doesn't work. Paul's agreed to come, but is still playing the victim. My sister and her family are all in. I don't know if this will fix anything. Family trauma doesn't heal overnight. But for the first time, I'm not the one carrying all the emotional weight. I'm not the designated failure anymore. The house with the leaky faucet and wobbly table isn't much, but it's mine. And when my family comes here now, they come on my terms. Like today's story? A super thanks helps me keep bringing you the best daily content. Your support means I can keep doing what I love. Thanks for being awesome.